in the Golden Beach neighborhood are you going to say that a person can't rent their home? Of course not. You then say, well, we don't want people to rent their home unless it's 5 years rental? Of course not. 3-year rental? Of course not. A 2-year rental, perhaps that should be the limitation. No, of course not. Well, how about a 1-year rental? That's again kind of ridiculous that I'd even make such an argument. So what I'm dealing with are durations. At what point does it become a commercial activity? If I rent it for 7 times at 30 days or more, it's not a commercial activity, but if I rent it for 7 times for 29 days, it is. If I rent it for 3 times at 29 days, it makes it a commercial involvement, a commercial enterprise. But if I rent it for 8 times at 31 days, it's not. It doesn't make sense. And it doesn't make sense because I have the legal right to rent the property. It's interesting as we get into the discussion here today that Chapter 509 has not been adopted by the City of Venice. Chapter 509, and I commend to you another document that was contained within the exhibits. It's that's the memo from Mike Banham, B-A-N-I-M, dated August 7th, 2006, and it carbon copied Gary Tillman and Tara Westmoreland, and it's regarding the Venice, Florida interpretation of DBPR's resort dwelling license for their zoning. And I'll read a portion of that. Mike Banham, by the way, was the Regional Settlement Officer, the Office of Compliance and Licensing, representing Districts 3 Tampa, 4 Orlando, 7 Fort Myers, which includes this district of Venice. He says this. He sent a copy of this, by the way, to his general counsel for the DBPR. As stated previously, the Division of Hotels and Restaurants has limited authority when interfacing with city and county governmental authorities. The classifications you reference are used to determine the fire safety and sanitation requirements. Cities and counties can legislate ordinances. Cities and counties can legislate ordinances and or create zoning requirements that may restrict certain operating lodging facilities. The resort dwelling license is a business license that permits transient rentals. I am not aware of any statute requirement prescribing or noting any zoning requirements. Certainly, cities and counties may preclude certain activity within a residential area. And we're not here today to say that you don't have the authority to limit residential usage by rentals. You have that right. You have to, but if you do it, you still have to compensate the person whose right you are taking away. It's not like you don't have the right to do it. It's that you have the right to do it, but you can't take it without paying for it. And that's the law. That's what the law is all about. And in this particular case, you have made a decision, if you want to. City of Key West did. I was involved in that case. I've been involved in now a series of cases going all the way to Sedona, Arizona. And you have the right to short-term rentals by specific legislative action. Unfortunately, when you do that, you have 2 things you have to consider. One, have you grandfathered in the pre-existing persons whose rights you are taking? And if you have grandfathered them in, and you want to stop them from using those rights, then you pay them for those rights. And that's what the law prescribes. We're not here today saying that we want to be treated any differently than anybody else, including you. And that is, when I own a property right for which I've invested and have made an economic involvement and interest in, and I wasn't precluded from doing it under the Venice Code, and I'm merely complying with the fire statutes of the state of Florida, unlike some people who don't even register them. And I guarantee you, when you look at Chapter 509, you'll find that there are clients of other people and other people who have not done this who don't register under 509, and they're doing a disservice to the public here in Venice, because we are required to be inspected. Unlike what Mr. Presat said, it's not just filling out a form. The property has to be inspected. okay, before we can get the license for that particular unit. It's nice to fill out the form. I hope that he doesn't have any problem of renting his property here in Venice. But the point is that once you do that, you are giving a better protection for the visitors who are coming into to your community, because now they're going to be protected from fire and the things that you would otherwise not have for visitors coming into somebody's home at other times. And there's no requirement of that. There is no requirement except the licensing requirement. Okay, there is no requirement to do this by the City of Venice. City of Venice hasn't imposed any restrictions. In order to put into perspective what the zoning laws pertain to, you have to look at purely what you have done. Your definition of single-family residence encompasses all of the properties, and I was kind enough for Mr. Presat to list all of our properties. Remember, there's multiple owners. This is not one owner who's come in and do it. We're representing all of those owners that we have filed our notice of appeal on, and not just a single owner. But even if it were, I stayed in one last night. I stayed in one right off of Bayfront. I've stayed in another one not far from where some of you all live in Golden Beach, because I wanted to see what it was like. I wanted to see what the circumstances were. And my personal experience doesn't have to tell you anything, because it's the things that you want to do as a city. If there's too much traffic, if I had the single family home and I have 12 people that live with me, there's no restriction on them. But if there's too much noise, if the garbage isn't done, if the things that we talk about that we don't like about a community are happening, you have a protection for that, the code enforcement. That's exactly why you fund the code enforcement, so that if people are creating problems within your community, dadgummit, stop it. They have no right to do that. But you know what? The Planning and Zoning Commission heard that there were 0 complaints about any of my clients. 0. But they were targeted. They were targeted by the city. They went after them to get the fire department, and you'll see those if you go through the things that we've identified for you. And although Ms. Zellman said, I don't want you to look at anything that happened before, I want to tell you a little bit about what did happen before. Prior to a single day, for over a year and a half, the City of Venice was considering legislation to regulate short-term rentals for almost a year and a half. And the recommendations, and we've included it in our packet, include, and I'll show you this, you'll see it when you go again, review of short-term rentals of single-family homes that was prepared by your Planning and Zoning. Tom Slaughter.